this real life?
Yeah, this is real life.
Welcome back, Buc Bros, to episode 13. First, I want you guys to know that this episode will be a little bit shorter than most, as we will not have a fourth quarter. But don't worry, we plan on making this up in the next episode. We have something really special planned for next week, so stay tuned. As for this video, we start as always with the game review. And once again, the Buccaneers lose a close one, 38-35 to the New York Giants. I can summarize my reaction to this game in one short clip.
Makes me wanna puke!
Yes, the Buccaneers' effort this past Sunday was vomit-inducing. There's a lot to unpack in this game. From a Jameis reappearance after Fitzpatrick was benched, to the defense doing their best Swiss cheese impersonation, to something I've noticed throughout all of our games, which is poor decision-making. Let's start with the QB position. Fitzpatrick was named the starter earlier in the week by Coach Cutter, and he actually started this game pretty well. He went 7 of 9 for 90 yards and added a rushing TD. Despite this, the Buccaneers were still down 14-7 thanks to our defense, which I'll get to in a second. And that's when Fitzpatrick started turning into Fitz-tragic. Near the end of the first half, Fitzpatrick was driving the Bucs down the field only to result in an interception on the Giants' 10-yard line. To start the third quarter, Fitzpatrick threw a pick six, and then on the very next drive, as the Bucs were driving down the field yet again, Fitzpatrick threw an interception in the Giants' end zone. This ended Fitzpatrick's day, and we saw a reappearance of Jameis Winston. Winston led the Buccaneers on 4 consecutive touchdown drives, only to fall short with 20 seconds left, throwing a game-sealing interception. While Winston gave an admirable performance coming in relief, as a fan, personally, I'm tired of this constant QB carousel. I want someone I can trust behind center, and right now the only thing I trust about our QBs is to increase my blood pressure and accelerate my liver's deterioration. It's a Bucs life. Speaking of trust, does any Buc fan trust our defense to stop any offense at this point? The Buccaneers defense returned to the mean again this week after a strong performance against the Redskins, allowing 38 points and letting rookie Saquon Barkley run all over us. Barkley finished the game with 142 rushing yards and a total of 3 touchdowns. I think the most frustrated I was with the defense during this game is when the Bucs offense was mounting a comeback and got the score to a reasonable 28-31 with 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Instead of coming out with heart and a lot of passion, the Bucs defense comes out and lets the Giants score a touchdown in under 2 minutes, making the game a 10-point deficit yet again. Players were out of position, they didn't understand their job, and overall it was just poor execution of plays. We also kept the trend going of not creating a defensive turnover for the 7th straight game. Our turnover margin now sits at -23, again worst in the league. Failure at all levels of the defense can only point to one thing, and that is the topic of my third point. Coaching once again failed the Bucs this Sunday. Not only is this failure noticeable in the players' performance, it's also evident in the decision-making throughout the game. Case in point, the Buccaneers' first drive was very promising, and on 4th and inches, the Buccaneer coaches decide to go for it. The Buccaneers' offense fails to execute, and lo and behold, the game ends with the Buccaneers being down by 3. Now, I'm not suggesting that this one call cost us the game or was even the wrong call, but it does point to me as a fan that the coaches don't understand their players that well, and also they don't know how to win games. Nothing has been more clear to me this season than coaches and players not being on the same page. When fans see this disparity, we know that there needs to be a change, and I'm willing to bet we're going to see one at the end of the season. With that in mind, it's time for the second quarter, Buc Bros. It's time for Come At Me, Bro.
What's up, bro? What, bro? Sup, bro? Take a swing, bro. Right here, bro.
Welcome back, Buc Bros. I want to talk about the most incredible performance I've ever witnessed. A young quarterback throwing touchdown after touchdown, a defense that was built up through the draft that's young and hungry, scoring points, disrupting plays, in a run game where lines were getting pushed, they were making holes. It was second to none. I'm speaking, of course, about the Monday Night Football game, Rams, Chiefs. This is the new NFL, people. This is everything we don't have. This is how far we've fallen behind. But this is what we need to aspire to be, to succeed in the modern game. This is going to require a strategic reimagining, a rebuilding of this franchise. However, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, and our first step needs to be a new head coach. Now, why coach before GM? And that's because I think it's important to know who's going to be on the sideline, who's going to be in the locker room, who's going to be the face that we see rebuilding this franchise. And that's an important decision that needs to be made, in my opinion, before any other decision. Now, your average head coaching candidate, he's an aging, old, white man, student of the game, usually found mediocre success in the past. You're going to hear names thrown around like the defensive coordinator from Philly. You're going to hear the Harbaugh's name thrown around. You'll even hear names like Matt Patricia. I don't want another retread coach. Now, you can get a new coach. You can go out and get a college coach or an offensive coordinator, but there's risk there too. A lot of guys who have made the leap from college to the NFL have fallen flat on their face, and it happens a lot, even some of the big names. Your best bet is typically an NFL offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator who shows they're ready to step up and lead a franchise. These are typically your safest bet, and they find the most success compared to former head coaches and college coaches making a step to the NFL. Current offensive coordinators who have never been a head coach before typically find the most success. So let's look at some of the big names being bandied about online and in the bar. First up, John Harbaugh. This is the name I hear being thrown around a lot for one simple reason. He's got name recognition. People have heard of him. They may not, however, have heard that his team repeatedly misses the playoffs. They're having a trending downward kind of year. They're not getting better. He's not even the better Harbaugh. So this is the kind of dumb mistake I can see Tampa Bay making. An old, worn-out coach who is, set in their ways. He's got a losing mentality. I'm sure this is the kind of guy Gerald McCoy would love to see come into the building. These two would surely get along. Next up, Detroit Lions head coach, spokesman for Hungry Man Dinners, Matt Patricia. I expect if his season continues to spiral out of control the way it has been in Detroit, he took a team that was on the cusp of the playoffs and just absolutely burned it to the ground. He came in and essentially accentuated everything that was wrong with his team. This is another decision I could see the Glazers making immediately. If the ownership in Detroit decides to get rid of Patricia, like is what I've been hearing online, there's a good chance I could see the Glazers bringing in somebody this bad to just make matters even worse in Tampa. That's an easy one for the Glazers I could see being made. My pick, who I would like to see, is Kansas City offensive coordinator. I can't pronounce his last name. Dude's on top of the world right now. He's got one of the most explosive offenses in the NFL. He's helping to develop a dangerously good young quarterback. This is a guy who could have an instant impact on our team. He could help bring the loaded offensive weapons we have, help them to continue to dominate, and most importantly, he might be able to bring new life to Jameis Winston. He's working with Mahomes right now. Who knows what this guy could do working with Winston? And if the time comes that we have to draft a young quarterback, then so be it. This is the kind of guy who has that experience. And lastly, there's what I consider the most likely option, which is current Bucs offensive coordinator Todd Monken. This is a guy who everyone got excited about when he took over play calling duties from Dirk Cutter. really made the offense look explosive for the first time in a while. But he hasn't really fixed any of the problems that we have. We still have no run game. We still have a really unimpressive offensive line. We have guys who I'm not sure why they're even starting, like Caleb Benenoch. He's the offensive coordinator. He could make changes on the offensive line if he truly believed them. But he doesn't see a problem there because there's been no changes made, and that concerns me. It concerns me when we still don't have a run game. It concerns me when Jameis Winston still can't hook up with Deshaun Jackson. We have prolific turnover problems. Those things concern me. Now, they're going to probably let Dirk Cutter and Jason Light go at the end of the season, and I expect the Glazers will most likely make him the head coach, Todd Monken the head coach. Don't expect things to change in that case, no matter who he even brings in to help. So, whoever our next head coach is, I expect one thing to remain constant, and that's my utter lack of enthusiasm.
Hey, mateys! Welcome back from halftime. Or possibly the second period break. Now, if y'all recall, in episode 11, John and I did a segment where we discussed which of our starting defensive players should stay on board the ship or walk the plank. Well, now it's time for the offense. This may be a bit tougher than the defense, or whatever you want to call the 11 players we put on the field against opposing offenses, given that for this offense, in terms of total yards and points scored, this is the most prolific offense in Tampa Bay history. But that being said, we are still 3-7, so nobody is safe from the depths of Tampa Bay. Just like we did with the defense, we're only going to be addressing the 11 starting players for offense, but obviously that's going to include Jameis Winston at quarterback. We're also going to throw in a few players who have made some major contributions on offense throughout the year. So let's get into it, starting with quarterback, Ryan Fitzpatrick and Jameis Winston. I don't think I have to go into too much detail regarding the performance of both these players, as this has been the story of the 2018 season. Who will cut or start? Who will throw more interceptions? Who will come off the bench and almost lead the team to an epic comeback? And finally, who cares? Ryan Fitzpatrick is a free agent after the season, while Jameis does have a fifth-year option, yes, at $20 million, if we choose to pick it up next season. As for us, I think we know what we have in both quarterbacks. Both are gunslingers who are capable of putting up amazing stats, but both are capable as well of turning the ball over at an alarming rate. Just for that, Buc Brocasters, I think it's time that both Fitzpatrick and Winston walk the plank. All right, on to running back, Peyton Barber. The barbershop has been open for most of the season, and I, for one, think he's shown some real promise. He runs hard, he's able to shed tackles, and he rarely gets stopped for a loss. Currently on the season, he has 543 yards through 10 games, and he's averaging about 4 yards a carry. That's pretty dang good when you consider some of the terrible blocking we've had from our offensive line. So for that, Mr. Barber, you get to stay on board. All right, on to the wide receivers. Mike Evans, Deshaun Jackson, and Adam Humphries. If there was one area of this team that we all thought coming into the season the Bucs had elite talent at, it was definitely wide receiver. Mike Evans, one of only 3 players in NFL history to have over 1,000 yards in each of his first 4 seasons. Djax, the greatest deep threat in NFL history. And obviously, the great humpback whale manning the slot. How could this unit be stopped? And for the most part, the season has shown that to be true. Evans has 957 yards through 10 games and should easily have over 1,000 yards for his 5th straight year. Djax had a torrid start, but has slowed down some due to some of the inconsistent play at quarterback. And Humphries has shown that he can take over games in the slot when the opposing defenses concentrate on stopping Evans and Djax, for example, the Carolina game. Both Evans and Humphries are young players, and they're going to continue to contribute to the offense going forward. So for that, both are staying on board. Djax, however, is over 30 and is at the tail end of his career. Earlier this season, there were some rumors that Djax requested a trade out of Tampa Bay, given the tumultuous relationship he has with Jameis Winston. And with the team in a losing spiral, Djax just hasn't had the same juice as he had earlier in the season. So while he's been exciting to watch play on the field this season at times, it's probably time for him to move on after this season. Djax, you're walking the plank! Alright, on to tight end. O.J. Howard and Cameron Brate. Another position coming into the season where on paper, this looked like to be one of the elite tight end duos in the NFL. The Juice had a promising rookie season, and before he was injured, and now lost for the season during the Giants game, he was having a hell of a season. 34 receptions, 565 yards, and 5 touchdowns through 10 games. Needless to say, the juice was loose for most of this season. As for Brate the Great, well, it hasn't really been that great this season. For most of Jameis' time in Tampa, Brate was his go-to guy, especially in the red zone. This season, though, he only has 17 catches for 159 yards, along with 3 touchdowns. Not what we really expected from a guy that we signed to a long-term contract in the offseason. Still, it's hard not to like this unit going forward if we can find some stability at the quarterback position. Juice and Brate, you're staying on board. All right, on the offensive line, Donovan Smith, Ali Marpet, Ryan Jensen, Caleb Benenoch, and DeMar Dotson. This is where it gets good, guys. Outside of Ali G. Marpet, this unit has been a major disappointment this season. Let's start at the tackle position. Donovan Smith was supposed to step up in his contract season, finally showing the promise that made him our second-round pick in 2015. That hasn't been the case this year, as he is consistently beat by above-average or elite pass rushers, and his run blocking leaves a lot to be desired. PFF grades him out as an average tackle and number 51 overall in the league. That's nothing special. As for Dotsy, he's been better than Smith and has probably been our most consistent lineman over the past few seasons. PFF has graded him out as an above-average tackle, but Dotsy's on the wrong side of 30, and his knees are probably going to give out sooner rather than later. Keeping that in mind, I think it's time that for both Smith and Dotsy, you're both walking the plank. All right, on to guards. Ali Marpet is by far our best lineman this season, and the Bucs just signed him to a long-term extension during the season. Not much else needs to be said. Ali Marpet, you're staying on board. Now, as for Caleb Benenoch, he might be the worst right guard I've ever seen on a football field. Run blocking, non-existent. Pass blocking, always find him on his ass. I tell you his PFF score, but all they have on their official page for him is a picture of a screen door. This is about as easy as it gets, guys. Benenoch, you're walking the plank. Finally, at center, we have Ryan No Soul Jensen. Our big-time free agent signing from the offseason outside of the defensive line, Mr. Jensen has been a big disappointment so far. He's ranked as a below-average center by PFF, number 30 overall, and it's easy to tell that he struggles with identifying blitz packages and calling out blocking schemes at the line. He's also had his fair share of bad snaps, so it might be time to lay off some of those Krispy Kremes, guy. If the Bucs were to let him go next season, he would have a pretty big hit to the salary cap, but after next season, his salary cap hit decreases significantly. But alas, our ship sails one season at a time, and as such, our yet another disappointing free agent center gets to stay on board. All right, well, there you have it, Buc Bro casters. If we had it our way, you'd see a much different offense outside of our skilled players going into next season. Like I said, I'll quickly hit on a few other contributors on offense. Chris Godwin, staying on board. Quiz Rogers, walk the plank. Evan Smith, walk the plank. And if I'm forgetting anybody else, consider yourself lucky. So, as Ryan mentioned at the start of this episode, we will not be having a fourth quarter of this episode, or as we affectionately call it, the Money Quarter! That's because we have something very special planned for y'all this Sunday, as we take on the 49ers at home. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, otherwise you might miss the fun we have planned for y'all and we don't want anyone to miss it. So until then, see you Buc Brocasters later. Go Bucs!
Yo ho, a pirate's life for me. We pillage, we plunder, we rifle and loot. Drink up, me hearties, yo ho. We kidnap and ravage and don't give a hoot. Drink up, me hearties, yo ho. Yo ho, a pirate's life